OK 嗱，剛剛入嚟嘅同學咧，第一件事咧，我想你首先去 take 咗 attendance 先嘅。如果你未做的話，咁就喺我哋呢個網站嗰度褪落少少咧，有一條 link。呢條 link 係我哋嘅 attendance link。如果你未 take attendance 嘅話，請你入翻去呢條 link，揀翻你係 fashion design， 俾翻個全名俾我，跟住你個 student ID， 同埋咧之前咧我俾咗一條 link 出嚟，就係關於我個 SPSS 嘅 course 嘅，就係呢一個 course。咁之前係俾大家免費 enroll 嘅。如果你有 enroll 到嘅話，請你喺個 attendance 呢一度咧 take 翻個 yes 俾我。如果冇嘅話咧，請你 take 翻個 no。咁我做翻個記錄嘅啫。OK， 咁啊 Alpha 未出現，咁我哋 Alpha 喺咩度啊？好似冇。OK， 我哋唔好理佢啦。咁我哋開始住先啦。嗱，首先咧，第一樣嘢就係想同你講翻咧，我哋呢一個網站咧有幾樣重要嘅資訊，我係希望咧你要知道嘅。第一，由再下個星期開始咧，我哋就會咧做呢個 workshop。個 workshop 嘅意思就係話，我會睇翻各位嘅各自嘅 research， 睇下你哋個問卷，睇下你哋嘅數據，然後咧就會教大家點樣去做你自己嘅數據分析。咁我到時做咧，我就唔會講 lecture 嘅，我係會個別咁樣同你哋逐個傾嘅。咁因為唔同嘅人咧遇到嘅問題都會唔同，咁所以我到時咧我就會咁樣做啦。嗱，但係今日咧，我就會同你講一啲基本嘢。嗱，之前我哋嗰個 Udemy 嘅課程咧，呢一度，咁其實我已經將關於 data analysis 嘅一啲基本嘢咧，喺呢個課程裏邊講咗㗎啦。嗱，如果你之前冇 enroll 到嘅，請你話翻俾阿 Alpha 聽，因為我可以再出多一次嗰個免費 enroll 嗰張 coupon。咁但係咧，我要集埋一齊一次過咁做。所以如果你之前冇 enroll，而你又想 enroll 翻咧，請你俾翻個名俾 Alpha，咁我請佢幫我一次過處理。嗱，咁但係咧，另外一樣嘢咧就係今日咧，我會特別咧講兩個 topic。第一咧就係一個叫做 Jamovi 嘅軟件。個原因係大家知道咧，而家你就返唔到學校，咁就好多同學咧喺屋企係冇得用 SPSS。咁所以咧，為咗解決呢個問題咧，我就揾咗另外一隻軟件。呢隻軟件叫做 Jamovi。咁喺呢度咧，你可以揾到條 link。嗱，咁呢個軟件有咩特別嘅地方咧？就係佢同 SPSS 嘅操作好相似。所以如果你睇咗我之前嗰個課程，對於 SPSS 有一啲概念嘅話咧，咁跟住當你 download 呢個軟件咧，咁啊就比較容易咧，可以上到手，咁啊可以攞嚟分析你嘅數據。呢個我陣間會抽時間教你呢隻軟件點樣裝，同埋點樣用法。第二樣嘢咧就係Alpha 就指明就係咧，我要講一個 topic 咧，就係做 qualitative analysis。qualitative analysis 咧，我哋中文叫做質性研究。個意思就係呢個我哋平時咧就處理嗰啲就係問卷嘅數據。咁但係咧有陣時我哋會唔做問卷，我哋會做訪問，或者我哋會走去做一啲叫做觀察啊，所謂嘅 observation。呢一啲咁嘅數據叫做質性嘅數據，佢唔係數字嚟嘅，但係我哋都要有方法分析。所以今日我嘅另外一個部分就係會教大家點樣做呢個質性嘅數據嘅分析。咁我知道唔係每一個人都會用得到呢個質性嘅數據，就係叫 qualitative research。但係咧呢個技巧對你都係有用嘅，所以我今日會抽時間講埋。好啦，關於以上嘅安排，如果清楚嘅話咧，請你喺個 chat room 度打 OK。 如果有問題嘅話咧，請你喺個 chat room 嗰度問。Good. And let me ask one more time, is there anyone here who wants me to teach in English? If yes, please say English in the chat room. OK， 另外 Alpha 喺咪喺度啊？OK， 唔見人，好，唔緊要。好嗱，咁我哋咧而家咧就進入我哋嘅第一部分。我會先講我哋嘅 qualitative research。OK， 咁我會轉一轉個 screen 嘅。OK， 大家見唔見到我嗰個 iPad 嘅畫面？見到嘅話咧，請你喺個 chat room 嗰度打 iPad。係 OK， 好 good。OK 嗱，咁我而家咧開始講呢個 qualitative research， 跟住之後我先至再翻到嚟咧，再講翻我哋個嗰個軟件嘅問題。好啦，嗱，我唔知你對於呢個 qualitative research 同埋 quantitative research 之間咧嗰個關係，唔知你清唔清楚？嗱，我舉一個例子。嗱，假設咧而家你就有個研究，個研究好簡單嘅啫，就係你想知道咧嗰啲關於嗰啲人咧，佢嗰個鍾意去邊間餐廳。譬如咧，我而家有一間 M 字頭嘅餐廳啦，咁唔好開名，大家知道我講邊間啦。另外有一間 K 字頭嘅餐廳，咁呢兩間嘢都係呢個競爭對手嚟嘅。嗱，咁而家咧，假設咧，你就好簡單嘅，你想訪問或者你想問一啲人，你問佢，你中意去 M 字頭嗰間餐廳多啲，還是去 K 字頭嗰間餐廳，還是去其他嘅餐廳？嗱，呢個問題好簡單嘅啫。如果你用問卷嚟問咧，你嗰條問題嘅問法就會係話，你可能俾幾個選擇佢揀，你最中意邊間餐廳？選擇 A 就係 M 字頭嗰間，選擇 B 就係 K 字頭嗰間，然後選擇 C 咧 others， 跟住俾個位佢填翻佢中意邊一間，就係咁樣嘅啫。嗱，呢啲咁嘅問題咧，我哋有個名堂，我哋叫做 what question。what 嘅意思就係話，你純粹就係問一個好簡單嘅問題，就係問點樣或者係乜嘢。咁呢啲問題咧，我哋話咧叫做係一個 structure 嘅，即係話佢係好有結構嘅。因為呢條問題無論你問邊個都好，你都係用翻同一份問卷列出幾個 option 俾佢，就可以問得到噶啦。我哋叫做咧呢一種咧叫做 structured 有結構嘅問題。第二就係佢究竟會答啲咩答案咧？其實亦都係某程度上係 predictable。predictable 即係話我哋係可以預測嘅。嗱，呢件事好緊要，因為唯有係你可以預測知道人哋會有咩答案，你先至能夠將啲答案或者啲選項預先寫低擺落份問卷嗰度。問卷咧一定係做好印出嚟或者擺上網，跟住俾人填。換句話講，喺你問佢之前，你就已經要諗定咧呢個答案有啲乜嘢選項。如果你唔知道個答案有咩選項嘅話咧，你係唔可能擺喺份問卷度問佢嘅。嗱，呢一點咧非常之重要。嗱，第三點咧就係我哋叫 generalizable。generalizable 嘅意思就係話同一條問題你可以走去問好多個人，每一個人咧你問佢嘅問法都係一樣。咁假設 你其實咧，你個研究對象裏邊有1000個人，但係咧你淨係抽樣抽咗其中50個走去問。嗱，咁樣問法，由於條問題好簡單，而且條問題好有結構性，所以當你咁樣問嘅時候，你預計咧嗰50個人俾你嘅答案咧，某程度上係可以代表到全部1000個人嘅答案嘅。嗱，呢個咁樣由細推到去大嘅呢一個做法咧，如果你有睇我之前段片咧，呢個叫做 inferential statistics 推論性統計。能夠做到咁咧，我哋就話咧，我哋啲結果係 generalizable 嘅，係可以咧由一個樣本嘅結果去推演去到一個 population 嘅結果，咁樣叫做 generalizable。嗱，以上嘅概念如果明白嘅話，請你打 OK。我哋逐樣嚟。OK，good。嗱，咁但係咧，你又幻想啦，呢條問題問起上嚟就簡單啦，而且好似都答案咧亦都好簡單。但係做 research 咧，我哋唔係咧，淨係想問呢啲咁簡單嘅問題。有時我哋想進一步，想知道多啲嘢。譬如咧，呢度第2條問題就係話 why 點解？舉例，如果嗰個人話俾你聽佢中意食 M 字頭呢間餐廳，咁你都想進一步問，喂，咁點解你中意食呢間餐廳嘅嘢咧？你就會問佢嗰個原因。嗱，問原因咧有2種問法。第一，你都係列出有幾多種原因啦。譬如原因一，第一個 option 就係 cheap 咁樣，好平啦。第2咧就係 good taste。第3咧就係譬如你中意嗰個開心樂園餐嗰啲玩具咁樣，如此類推。OK， 你可以列出有啲乜嘢嘅可能性，然後你一樣係擺喺份問卷嗰度俾佢答。OK， 呢個都好容易理解。嗱，咁萬一佢所答嗰個原因唔係你列出嘅原因，咁點咧？你當然都可以咧俾一個選項，佢叫做 others， 跟住就叫佢填。嗱，你相比起頭先第一個問題嚟講咧，呢個問題係複雜咗嘅喎，因為佢所答嘅嘢嘅範圍咧係可以咧更加包羅萬有。第一條問題佢最多就係答 M 或者答 K 或者答其他，你都係俾個餐廳名你嘅啫。但係當你問佢點解嘅時候咧，個答案就可以多咗好多種可能性。嗱，我哋話咧呢種情況相比起剛才嗰種情況嚟講咧，我哋個結構性就冇咁強啦，因為每個人咧佢所答嘅嘢咧都可以咧好大分別。你亦都好難預測到咧佢個答案會係點。譬如你好難話幾個 option 就寫低晒所有可能嘅答案，呢個比較困難。嗱，由於係咁咧，所以我哋就話咧呢啲咁嘅人啊，佢答嘅答案咧難啲去 generalize， 因為佢冇咁統一，亦都唔係來去嗰幾款，所以咧你好難話就住呢一班人嘅答案咧就推而廣之，就推論出咧其他人嘅答案都應該會係咁。嗱，呢個就叫做一個 why 嘅 question。嗱，所以同第一條問題對比咧，我哋個結構性比較低啲，啲 options 冇咁容易預測到，因為複雜咗啦。第3，由於佢複雜咗，所以我哋冇咁容易推演到其他嘅情況。嗱，明白呢件事嘅話，亦都係請你打 OK。另外，如果你有問題，請你可以隨時將個問題打落個 chat room 嗰度，咁我會即刻回應翻嚟。好啦，嗱，第3樣嘢，嗱，大家 OK 嘅話咧，我哋睇下第3樣嘢。第3樣嘢就難搞啦。你想再進一步問，你喺呢啲餐廳嗰度，你嘅用膳嘅經歷或者經驗係點樣咧？你即係咩意思咧？就係話你去呢啲餐廳，你遇過啲咩事啊？你食過啲咩？你覺得中意㗎？嗱，其實呢個問題咧係上面呢堆問題嘅進一步深入問落去嘅喎。嗱，第一條問題淨係問佢中意邊間，第2條問題問下佢嘅原因，第3條問題其實係要佢解釋佢個原因。嗱，但係第3條問題咧就更加難答啦，因為第一 佢原因可以包羅萬有。OK， 等一陣啊，係咪有外籍嘅同學入咗嚟 ？OK， 唔好理佢先。OK， 嗱，第三個原因咧就更加包羅萬有，因為佢可以係 structured， 唔係 sorry， 因為佢係冇乜結構嘅，冇乜結構嘅，因為佢答嘅答案佢嘅 experience 可以係好多唔同類型嘅 experience。而且咧，對於佢同你講嘅每一樣嘢，你亦都可以咧進一步深入咁樣問入去，我哋叫做 follow up question。所以就算係你問佢哋每個人咧，你問佢哋嘅嘢都係唔同嘅喎，個答案。嗱，或者個問法亦都係唔同嘅。咁所以咧，遇到呢種情況，你係好難咧將你嘅問題預先寫喺份問卷嗰度，因為你要預先知道問乜，你先寫到落份問卷。但係如果你係就住每個人嘅答案，再進一步問一啲深入嘅問題，咁你根本就唔可能預先知道你會問啲咩深入嘅問題。咁啊，同樣嘅原理，我哋所謂 option 係 unpredictable。option unpredictable， 因為你唔知道佢會答啲乜。咁而且每個人答嘅嘢都唔同，甚至每個人答嘅問題都係唔同嘅，所以咧更加 OK。So let's switch to English. So now we are talking about the qualitative analysis method. And here I'm using my first example, an example in which you want to ask what is the most favorite restaurant of the respondents. So I have talked about 3 different kinds of questions. The first kind of question is a what question, which means you simply ask, what is your favorable restaurant? And the options in this case are more or less predictable because you simply give them an option like a restaurant M, you know what I mean, restaurant K, and any other restaurant. So in this case, we say that the question itself is structured. It means that you already know how you would like to ask your question in advance. And so you can put this question into a questionnaire and you distribute the questionnaire to your respondents. And the options are predictable as well because they either answer you M or K or other. So we say the option is predictable. And finally, the answer to these questions, because they are simple and they are structured, so we say that the answers are generalizable as well. Generalizable here means that we select, let's say we have a population of 1,000 students, and you want to draw a sample of 100 students out of them. And to those 100 students, you ask them this question, and then you can generalize the results from the sample to the population. This is what I call generalizable, okay? And if you have watched my Udemy, my SPSS video course on Udemy previously, you know that I'm talking about inferential statistics. Now, but we can also ask a second type of question here, which is to ask them about the reasons why they prefer that particular restaurant. Now, if you think about this, compare with the first question, the why question is less structured. And also the options are less predictable because you don't really know what kind of answers they are going to give you. If you only ask them which restaurant they prefer, they give you the name of the restaurant. But if you ask them the reason behind that, then the answer can be more complicated. So it's difficult for you to predict their answer in this question. So we say that for this one, the second question, it is less structured and also the options are less predictable. And for these 2 reasons, we also say that the results are less generalizable to the population. But let's say you want to further ask them the third question. How is your experience with this restaurant? So when you ask this, it means that you are actually asking them to explain their reason given in the second question. Okay, they explain the reason by sharing your experience. And when they do it, you may also want to ask them follow-up questions. It means that, say, they give you a reason, they share with you some of their experience, and they want to know more about their experience, so you ask follow-up questions. Now, in this way, we say that the questions are less structured. And the reason is that you don't even know what questions you are going to ask, because your follow-up question would depend on their answers to the previous questions. So we say that the question here is the least structured. An implication of it is that, unlike the first question, in which you can put the question into the questionnaire because you know what to ask in advance. But when you want to ask the third question, you cannot put your questions in the questionnaire because you don't know what kind of follow-up questions you are going to ask. And so it means that you cannot do this with questionnaire survey. And of course, in this case, the options, or actually the answers, are less predictable. And also, for this reason, because everyone is giving a different answer, and also everyone is answering different questions. So we say that their answers are the least generalizable. So these are the differences between the three types of questions. So for all of you, if you understand this, please say yes in the chat room. Or otherwise, please type your question in the chat room. And for those of you who have just entered this video session, please remember to take your attendance. And you can take your attendance by going to our website. If you scroll down a little bit, just below the link to the Microsoft Teams, you will find a link to attendance. So please make sure that you take your attendance. So everyone, please tell me if you are okay with this slide or not. If you are okay with it, please say yes in the chat room. Okay, good. So that's why I'm spending some time in today's video session to tell you how to do qualitative analysis, because there are occasions in which you would like to use qualitative analysis in quantitative analysis. So let's move on. So here you see a summary to compare qualitative and quantitative analysis. Now, here you see that the qualitative analysis here is usually for exploratory study, while the quantitative analysis is for confirmatory study. Exploratory means we don't have any idea about the topic that we are studying. And so we don't even know how to ask the questions. And because we don't know how to ask the questions, we don't know how to write the questionnaire, right? And so the only way for us to do the research in this case is to do an exploratory research, to explore the topic. Now, confirmatory, on the other hand, means you already know something about the research topic, and you even have some hypothesis. Hypothesis means assumptions here. You think something might be true, but you don't know whether it is really true or not. So you collect quantitative data and want to use the data to confirm your hypothesis or confirm your assumption. Of course, you can also use it to disprove your assumption. So this is what we call confirmatory. And as you know now, if we are doing quantitative research, we aim for generalization. We collect the sample data, and we want to generalize the sample results to the population results. This is what we call by generalization. Now, for qualitative, on the other hand, we aim for understanding. Understanding means we don't care whether what we get from the data is generalizable to everyone else. We don't care about that. We only care to have a deep understanding of the individuals that we are talking to. So that is what I mean for understanding. So qualitative research is good for understanding something deeply, but not good for generalization. On the other hand, quantitative research is good for generalization because you ask the same question to everyone else. But because you ask the same question to everyone else, you cannot ask follow-up questions to individual respondents. So it's not good for understanding them deeply. Now, sampling. For quantitative research, when we draw the sample, we want it to be random. Now, for those of you who have been collecting data these days, you know that the sample for the questionnaire survey should be random, because if it is not random, then you introduce bias into your findings. And then what you get might not be generalizable to the population. But this is not true for qualitative research. You know, for qualitative research, we aim to understand someone deeply. So we don't care about randomness. We will use non-random sampling. So let me give you an example. If you want to know how to get rich, of course, you are not going to interview me. You go to interview Li Ka-shing or someone else, or some other millionaires. You ask them, but not any random person in the population, because you want to know something deeply about a topic. So you select those people who can give you the deep insight. All right, so that's why for qualitative research, we don't usually do random sample. Now, sample size. Because we want to be generalizable in quantitative research, we tend to use a large sample. The larger, the better, because a larger sample is usually more representative of the whole population. But for qualitative research, we don't care about generalization. And also, if you want to ask someone very deeply, then it takes a lot of time. So usually for qualitative research, the sample size should be small. And finally, if you are doing quantitative research, you should use questionnaire and you use statistics to analyze it. That's what I've covered in my previous SPSS online course. But for here, in this session, we are going to talk about qualitative data collection, which means interview and observation. Interview means you talk to that person and then ask them deep questions. Observations means that you sit there and observe what people are doing. That is observation. And to analyze this kind of data, we use a technique called thematic analysis, which is also called QDA. QDA stands for qualitative data analysis. Okay, so that's a comparison between qualitative research and quantitative research. Now, for those of you, even for those of you who are doing quantitative research alone, it is still helpful for you to understand the difference between qualitative and quantitative, because somehow you may not realize that some of your questions should in fact be asked in the qualitative manner. So if you're okay with this page, please say okay in the chat room. And then I can proceed to the next one. Or otherwise, if you have any question, please type your question in the chat room. Okay, good. Now, so far, so good. Now, but some people may say, well, it seems that the qualitative and the quantitative methods are for very different purposes. Yes, that's true. They are for very different purposes. Now, suppose, what if I want to do exploratory research and at the same time, I want to do confirmatory research in the same study? If you pick one of these, you know you are going to miss the other, right? Now, and for that reason, for most people nowadays, we are actually doing a mixed methods research. Mixed method means we do both quantitative and qualitative research in the same study. That is what we call mixed method. So examples, like this is what I usually do. I conduct a questionnaire survey to a large group of people, and then I look at their answer, and I select some of them who have interesting answers, and then I invite them for interview so that I can ask them, why did you answer this in the questionnaire? Is there any further elaboration on your questionnaire answer? So this second part is qualitative research. Then the first part, the questionnaire, is quantitative research. So by doing the follow-up interviews, I will better understand the answers in the questionnaire. So that's one example. I usually do this in my research. And the second example is that you don't know how to do the questionnaire because you don't know what kind of questions to ask. This is usually true when you are very new to a particular field of study. So when you start a new field of study, you don't know anything about that field. And when you want to create a questionnaire to ask something, you don't even know what to write down in the questionnaire. So in that case, you want to do some qualitative research first. So you interview them, and you can also make observation and to get some initial insight or initial understanding of what's actually happening in this field of study. And once you get the insight, you can use the insight to create a questionnaire for survey. That's another example of mixed methods research. So at this point, I have told you the difference between the quantitative and qualitative research and also the mixed method. So let's see a summary. Now I draw this here. Suppose that in research, basically you are looking for truth, right? And the truth is usually hidden deep underground. So you have to dig through it in order to get the truth. Now, quantitative research is like this. You try to study something very comprehensively. You ask a lot of questions on a wide range of topics or a wide range of questions, but you can only ask simple questions. You cannot ask in-depth questions. So it means that when you dig into it, you cannot go very deep. But your question is very comprehensive. So that is why, because it is comprehensive, so it helps you to generalize your findings to others. But because it is not very deep, it is not good for understanding, but it is only good for some generalization. That is quantitative research. Now, on the other hand, qualitative means you dig very deep. It means that you ask follow-up questions. You ask a lot of follow-up questions to get a deep understanding of something. But because you are asking different questions to different people, what you are doing is not very comprehensive. You only know about a few of the respondents. You don't know about all of them because you only talk to them deeply okay, to a few of them and ask them deep questions. So qualitative is very deep, but is not very comprehensive. And for mixed method, we want to be deep and also we want to be comprehensive. So that's why in the mixed method, we usually dig on the surface, okay, be very comprehensive on the surface, and then we select a particular area or a particular group of respondents and ask them more in-depth questions. So we dig very deep here to learn more about that particular case, but we don't know very other details about anyone else. We only picked one as a few of the individuals or respondents and ask them deep questions. So that's basically a summary of the relationship between quantitative, qualitative, and also the mixed methods. So if you are okay with this one, please say yes in the chat room. So I hope for those of you who are doing quantitative study alone or who are doing qualitative study alone, you know where you are in this summary. You know the limitations of your research. If you are doing quantitative, okay, it's good that it is comprehensive, but it is your limitation here that you cannot understand something very deeply. But for those of you who only do qualitative research, you know that you can dig very deeply, but your result is not very comprehensive. Right? Notice the difference. So at this point, we can move on to talk about how to plan for your qualitative research. Now, first of all, you should you look at your own research question. Or some of you may not have written down your research question in your proposal, but instead you have written your research objectives in your proposal. Now that's the same thing basically. So for the what questions, the what questions are too simple. So we don't usually do qualitative research on the what questions. Like if you ask them their favorite restaurant, you simply give them a questionnaire for them to fill in their answer. So for this case, we do not use qualitative research. But if you want to ask for the reason and you want to ask them to elaborate their reason, then we do qualitative research. So that's the first step. Before you decide which kind of research to do, you have to investigate your research questions. Okay, second, this is from my own doctoral dissertation. So in my study, I have a few research questions on the left-hand side. Of course, this is not the complete sentence. I just put down the key concept here. So I'm asking them a few things about the attitude, the perception, the behavior, and the reason behind all these attitude, perception, and behavior. Now, the what attitude, this one obviously is a what question. So that's why I use quantitative research. And I used a questionnaire to collect answer, to answer this research question. Now, for the perception and the behavior, basically, I'm also asking what questions, but I'm also sometimes asking the how and the why questions inside. So that's why on the right-hand side, you see that I use both qualitative and also quantitative data to answer this kind of questions. Now, but here, for this session, I want you to look at the last one here. Now, you look at here, the research question here is basically a why question. So why question is not good for quantitative study. So for this reason, For these research questions, I mainly use qualitative analysis. And in order to collect the qualitative data, I conduct class observation and also I conduct interviews. So for your case, you also need to think about this. For your particular research questions, what type of data is appropriate? And also, what type of methods you should use to collect those data? Usually for quantitative data, we use questionnaire. And for qualitative data, we use class observation and observation and interview. So these are the most common types of data and data collection methods. And finally, once you decide that you want to use interview, for example, or maybe observation, then you also have to set the details and also the format. For the interview, you want to set where you conduct the interview. This is usually quite straightforward. How long should each interview session be? Now, this one is tricky. Now, of course, it depends on how much you want to ask your respondents. But if the interview is too long, then the respondents become too involved. And so that may not be a good thing. But if the interview is too short, then you may not have time to ask a lot of follow-up questions. And from my experience, this part should normally be 30 minutes for each session. So if you interview someone, you reserve half an hour for the interview session. That is not too long, but that is long enough for you to ask enough follow-up questions. Now, of course, you also want to determine what language you want to use. Of course, to report your research, you usually use English. But when you interview someone, a good practice is to use their native language. Like if the native language is Cantonese, then you ask them in Cantonese. If the native language is Mandarin, then you ask them in Mandarin and so forth. So that is very important because that makes sure that the interviewee will not give you, it makes sure that the interviewee will give you what you want. And there will not be any language problem. And then the next one, it is whether it should be structured or not. Structured means you write down a set of questions like the questionnaire, and then you simply ask them one by one, and you don't ask any follow-up question. You just read the question and ask them for the answer. This is structured. Now, of course, you know that this type of interview is not very helpful. Another type of interview is called the non-structured or unstructured interview. Unstructured interview means you simply talk freely. You don't have any agenda. You simply talk freely and see what the interviewee says to you. That is unstructured. In most cases, we do something called semi-structured. Semi-structured means you have some guiding questions in mind, but you also allow yourself to deviate from the guiding questions to ask follow-up questions. And this is the most helpful type of interview in most cases. And finally, you also want to consider whether you want to conduct interview individually or by group. Individual interview is usually the best. But in some cases, like if you are interviewing a group of very young kids, like a primary school students, they might not want to talk to you individually. And in that case, maybe it's a good idea to conduct group interview so that they are together with their friends. And so they will feel more relaxed during the interview session. So these are what you need to consider in the interview. Now for the observation means you sit there to observe others. There are two types of observation. Non-participant means you just sit there and you don't interfere with your with the people there. So you don't interfere, you just sit down here and see what they do. But participant observation means that you also take part in their activity to do something with them together. This is called the participant observation. In most cases, we only do non-participant observation because we don't want our own action to affect what they do. But in some other cases, people may want to do participant observation as well. And finally, there is another type of qualitative data, which is called document analysis. It means that you do not go out to ask someone about something. You don't do that. You simply look at some books or articles or research paper or report and so forth, and try to analyze what is written there. So this kind of analysis is called the document analysis because you basically analyze other people's documents. So this is a very different type of research, and I'm not covering this document analysis here. So now once you determine the method, then you determine how you collect your sample. Now remember, qualitative research is for understanding, not for generalization. So we do not do random sampling. We do non-random sampling to make sure that we select the individuals or groups that are particularly interesting. If they are not interesting, it means if they do not give you insights about your research, then you don't want to spend time with them. That is non-random sampling. And we also collect what we call the fake description. Fake description, it means a lot of details. Okay, and including the context. Context means if you ask them something, like you ask them, why do you like McDonald's? Okay, so you also ask them the background context. Oh, Alpha is here. Hello, Alpha. So you also ask them about their background context or their own personal background, because if you know their personal background, it will help you understand more about their answers. So that's what we call the fake description. We ask a lot of detail about the qualitative data. Now let's talk about the sample size. Previously, I told you that the sample size of qualitative research need not be very large. And in fact, if you conduct a questionnaire survey, you usually expect something more than 100. But for qualitative study, because we don't aim for generalization, so the sample size need not be very large. And a rule of thumb is that if we conduct interview, we usually conduct interview to at most 20 to 30 individuals. If you are more than that, then you spend a lot of time analyzing the interview data. And that may not be necessary for your research question. Now, and in some cases, even interviewing one individual or a few individuals will be fine. Because if you ask some really deep questions, then you still get a lot of insight, even though the sample size is not very large. All right, so that is the sampling method. Now, for this slide and the previous slides, if you are okay with that, please say okay in the chat room. Or if you have questions, please type your questions in the chat room. Okay, good. Okay. So let's say we have decided to use qualitative research. We have decided to do an interview. Then the next question is how we conduct the interview. So this is one example. For the interviews, and in particular for the semi-structured interview, you have to write down a list of guiding questions. Now, the guiding question means if you can ask those questions to the interviewees, and if they give you the answer, then you should be able to answer your own research question. Now, and for that reason, the guiding questions must be somewhat related to your research question. If the guiding questions are not related to your research questions, then what you collect from them will not help you answer your research question. So that is very important. And the table here gives you an example how I write the guiding questions for my own research. So here, I write down what research questions I'm talking about. And for each research question, what kind of guiding questions I want to ask, so that if they give me the answer to the guiding questions, then I can use it to answer my research questions. So these are very important. But before this, we also want to ask some warm-up questions. Warm-up means when you start your interview, you don't ask your guiding questions right away. You want to give them some time to warm up. And for my case, I usually ask them some general experience about the topic that I'm asking. I don't care what they say here. I just give them a chance to start talking so that they can warm up. And at the same time, when they start talking, I also get some initial idea of how they think about the particular topic. And then I know how to ask my guiding questions here. So that's how you plan for your interviews. But how about observation? Now for observation, we don't ask them anything. We just sit there and take notes. But in that case, we also want to design in advance what types of behaviors we want to put down into our notes. Because when you are making an observation, like you are sitting in a classroom and observing a group of students, of course, there are many things happening at the same time. And not all of them are related to your own research. So in observation, you want to define what types of behavior you want to put down into your notes. And of course, these behaviors are also related to your research questions. So here in the middle, what kind of behavior I want to observe? These two different kinds of behaviors. And if I write down about these behaviors, then I can use them to answer my research question. Now, but of course, again, before that, we want to write down something fundamental. For the observation, we want to write down the physical environment. Like if it is a classroom, you write down the physical environment of the classroom. If it is any other occasion, you write down the physical environment of that occasion. And also how many people are there. And also what they are doing. So this is the background information. Sometimes you also write down, if they are sitting, then you write down how they are sitting. Like in one of my research, I'm observing something like this. Some people are sitting at the table. So I also draw a diagram to show how they are sitting. So drawing the physical environment like this will help you better understand your observation data. So this is also very important. So at this point, I have finished talking about how to plan for your qualitative research. And next, we talk about how to actually collect the data. And I will focus on the interviews and the observation. Now, first of all, whether you are at the interview or you are at the observation, remember that what you put down on paper in your notes will not be enough. So nowadays, we usually also do the recording. For the interview, we usually do an audio or video recording. But for observation, we don't do audio, we do video recording only, because by video recording, you can look at their behavior from the video. Because sometimes when you sit there making an observation, you may miss something very important. Like when you are writing your notes, something happened and then you miss it. So for observation, we always do a video recording. But for interview, usually an audio recording will be enough. Unless if it is a group interview, you also want to observe the interaction between the different interviewees. So in that case, I also take a video recording so that I can watch them afterwards. Now, of course, for all of this, you should get the consent of the people involved. Okay, now the notes. So for all of these, you have to put down the following information into your own notes. Okay, whether it is interview or observation. You put down the date, the time, the venue, who is there, and also the setting, like the physical environment. Now, for the interview, you should write down the key points. Now, of course, everything is recorded in the audio, but it is still helpful to write down their key points because it helps you determine what type of follow-up questions to ask them. So I usually write down the key points, not for afterwards, but for the follow-up questions. Sometimes they give you non-verbal messages. Now, in the interview, when they talk to them, of course, they can give you their response in words. They tell you the response. But sometimes they tell you a facial expression. Sometimes they look happy, or sometimes they may look angry. So all of these are what we call non-verbal. And it is difficult to capture these kind of non-verbal messages in the interview. But we try to put them into the notes if we see them. And then afterwards, we refer to the video recordings, okay, to compare with what we have written down for our analysis. And also you put down the follow-up questions to ask. Now for the observation, we put down the behavior, okay, what they are doing. We put down the time at which they are doing that, and also the duration. How long is the duration of a particular behavior? Like if I see that the students are talking there, then I also write down for how long they have been talking. They just talk briefly, or they talk for an hour. So these can make a difference. So I write down the duration. And also, while I observe the people there, I also put down my own initial interpretations to the meaning of the behavior. Of course, that is very preliminary. I need to further analyze it afterwards, but I put down my initial interpretations so that I can refer to it later. And finally, for the language, for observation, when you write down your observation notes, you use the language which you want to report in the research, usually English. If you put down your field notes in Chinese, then there is a problem of translation later when you put it back into English in your report. So I would usually recommend using the same language in which you want to report the research to put down your observation notes. But for interviews, as I explained earlier, you want to use the interview or you want to write down your notes using the language of the interview. And the language is usually the native language of the interviewee. If they speak Cantonese, then you ask them in Cantonese. And later, we will translate the Chinese transcript to the reporting language, which is English. Okay, that is how we do the recordings, and we take notes during the interview and observations. Okay, so far, if you are okay with this, please say yes in the chat room. Okay, good. Now, the most troublesome or the most time-consuming step for the interview is not the time to conduct the interview. And it is also not the time to analyze the interview data. The most consuming step, I don't know if any one of you are doing that, is to transcribe the audio recording of the interview into text. Okay, so suppose that you have an audio recording, you have to turn it into text, write it on paper. This is very time consuming if you have tried it. And my experience is that if you are a beginning researcher, it usually takes at least 4 or 5 times the total length of all the interviews for you to transcribe the data. That is really painful process. So it means that if the total length of interview is 1 hour, then it takes 4 to 5 hours for you to transcribe that particular interview. And if you have 20 to 30 samples or 20 to 30 sessions of interview, then it takes more than 100 hours just for you to transcribe the audio recording into text. But since I'm here today, I also want to share with you how to speed this up. My experience is that it can speed up to 3 times the interview length, and you do this by using technology. So what I usually do is the following. I have the audio recording, then I play the audio recording sentence by sentence. And I play one sentence, then I use speech recognition software. I speak that sentence again. I repeat the sentence and then use and let the speech recognition software to convert my voice to text. So in that case, it will speed up to 3 times. Now, why 3 times? Because you listen to it 1 time. Okay, that is 1 time. You speak it 1 time, so that is 1 time. And then another time is for you to look back, to edit the transcript. So the fastest way is to use the speech recognition software, and you can finish it in 3 times the interview length. It means for an interview session of 1 hour, you can finish the transcription in 3 hours. That's the fastest I have seen. So if you have an even faster way, please do let me know. Okay, but transcription, this is how we do transcription. Okay, let me ask you, any one of you is trying to do transcription in your research, in this final year project? If yes, please say transcription in the chat room. Oh, what kind of tool are you using? Or how are you doing it? Okay, you use speech rec. Is it fast? 3 times the interview length or shorter than that? Yeah. you have to go back to check it. And if the software is really good, then you don't need to spend a lot of time in it. But sometimes if the software is not very good, or if you are not very experienced in it, then it takes more time. So anyway, that is how we do the transcription. Now, suppose that you have finished transcribing the data. So how do we analyze the data? Now, for qualitative data analysis, actually, there are two parts of the analysis here. Now, the same is true for the quantitative analysis. Now, let's talk about quantitative, which might be something that you're more familiar with. Now, for quantitative data, we usually do statistics, right? And we try to analyze the numbers. And this is the more difficult part in quantitative data analysis. And once you analyze the data using the statistics, it is usually straightforward to interpret the meaning of the data. Like if you find that the mean of something is very large, then you just say that, okay, the mean of this is very large, and you try to explain why. That is usually straightforward. So this part is more difficult for quantitative analysis, but this part is usually straightforward. Now, the same is not true for qualitative data. Qualitative data analysis here, this part is usually straightforward. Straightforward means you assign the codes. I tell you what I mean by the codes here later. You assign the codes to your qualitative data. Now, of course, that is not super easy, but that is also not too difficult. And usually it is straightforward. But what is more troublesome is this part. Because for qualitative analysis, you aim for understanding. And understanding means you need to think a lot about the interpretation of your data. You cannot simply do some mathematics and then you write down what you see from the data. That's not possible in qualitative analysis because you want to arrive at some deep understanding. So you have to do a lot of thinking in the interpretation. So for qualitative analysis, this part will take you much more time than the first one. So in other words, when you do quantitative data, you focus on statistics, but when you do qualitative data, you focus on the interpretation, and you do this by writing, usually in the discussion session. Okay, that is the difference. Now, let me show you the steps of doing this. This one is from a book. This is actually a classic from Creswell. Not too difficult to read. This is quite easy to understand. Research design, it talks about qualitative and quantitative approaches and also mixed method approaches. Now, so according to the steps here, to analyze qualitative data, you do, first of all, you get the raw data, and then you organize and prepare the data. So it means like a transcription is an example of data preparation. Now, once you transcribe all the data, you have the transcript of your interview or the observation notes. Then what you do is to read through all the data. It means you read through all the transcripts and the interview, and the observation notes again to get an idea, an overall idea of what they are talking. And then you code the data. Now, I tell you what is coding in the next few pages, but you code the data. It means that you assign some labels to the different parts of data to tell others what they mean. And then from these codes, you derive some common themes or some common descriptions. It means that these are the summaries or what you get from the interview transcript or from the observation notes. And finally, after you get the themes or the descriptions, you try to relate the different themes and the descriptions. Now, but this step might also take some time because you need to go back and forth many times. The reason is that the coding that you use, the coding means the label, but the label, when you first start analyzing the data, you might not know what kind of labels to use to analyze your data. So you might be using an initial set of labels, then you go through the themes and the description, and then you find that the labels are not very good. And then you go back to revise your labels. You use different codes, and then you do everything again. And then you go back and forth until you think that you can reasonably relate the different things and answer your research questions. So this part might take some time. You need to go back and forth many times to refine or to revise your labels or codes. And finally, the last step would be to interpret the meaning of the themes and the descriptions. And as I told you, this is usually the most important part in the qualitative data analysis. So here is an example of how I do the coding. Now, the transcript on the right-hand side, I'm sorry, is in Chinese, but it doesn't matter. Chinese is the original, the language of the interview. Now, but let me show you what I mean by code. So here, this sentence here, if you can't read Chinese, it doesn't matter. It's just a sentence. And this is one of the codes I assign to this sentence. And this sentence, the student is talking about something is not very effective. So I put down the label, not effective. And later, I also have another sentence, which I also think that it is saying that something is not effective. So I assign the same label, not effective here. So basically, this is how we code the qualitative data. But of course, from here, you see that it is difficult to design what kind of labels to use. So suppose that I initially code this as not effective, but then later I find that this code is not very helpful. So in that case, I will change this code to something else. And then I go back to label them again and again, until I think that the labels are appropriate. And also you see that the same sentence can be associated with more than one labels. So for this one, I also label it as laziness. Laziness here because they think that something is not effective, and one reason is that they are lazy. So I attach the label laziness to this sentence, and so forth. So you read through your interview transcripts, and you put down the labels to the corresponding sentences. And once you put down the labels, then suppose that when you interpret your data, you want to see, okay, what are people saying about laziness? Then I simply extract all the sentences associated with the label laziness. So here, is all the sentences from my interview transcript. So with these sentences, I can further try to interpret what they mean. So that is what I mean by coding. Now you may ask, what software I am using here? Now this is a difficult question to answer. And the reason is that for qualitative data analysis, there are not many good software to use. Now, the most famous one is NVivo. But the problem is this thing is very expensive. And I'm not sure if here DI has a license for it. Is any one of you using this software for your qualitative analysis? But I do not have license to use this, so I am actually using another software which is called RQDA. The problem is that RQDA is very difficult to use for the normal person. I consider myself a technical person, so I don't find a lot of problems in it. But this software in general is not easy to use, although it is free of charge. It is open source. So for those of you, unless you have access to softwares like NVivo, I suggest that you simply do this by hand. This will be the simplest solution for you. So when do this by hand, you print out, I suggest that you print out all the transcripts. You use different color pens to mark the labels. If there are not many of the transcripts, then it should be a feasible solution, much simpler than using software. But anyway, one more thing to say here is that you should, now let's say you have interviewed like 10 people, then for these 10 people, you should use the same set of codes. So it means that if you use laziness as one of the labels, in one of the interview transcripts, then you should also use the same code in the interview transcript by another person. You use the same code because when you use the same code, then you can compare the results from different people. If you use different codes, then it's difficult for you to compare across different people. Now, but for interview, you use the same set of code, but if you also do observation, then you should use another set of code for observation, because what you try to collect from observation is not the same as what you try to collect from interview. So it's appropriate for you to use a different set of code for all the interview notes. So that is how we do the coding. So at this point, if you are okay with this, please say okay in the chat room. Okay, good. So let's move on to the last step, how to report the qualitative findings. So basically, we try to summarize the themes and the descriptions and put down the related sections from the interview notes into tables. And we also write a lot to interpret what the data mean to your research and more importantly, how they answer the research question. Now, we usually do the first one in the results and analysis section of your report. And for the second one, we write it in the discussion. Okay, so there is a difference. Okay, the first one, write down in the results and analysis. And for the second one, write it in the discussion and write it in more detail, because interpretation is very important for qualitative research. Now, but when you interpret the result, there is one thing that you have to bear in mind. Never attempt to generalize your qualitative findings. And the reason is clear. I told you that for qualitative finding, your sample is not random. And your sample size is small. Your questions are not structured. So you cannot generalize your qualitative data to the whole population. Now, more specifically, it means the following. What you find in your interview or observation data, they are examples. They are not rules or trends or patterns. So when you write this, you should write one respondent or some respondents express that, okay? You talk about those people who talk about this, but never try to generalize like most of the respondents. Now, even if you, like say, if you interview 20 people and 15 people say something, you still should not use most of the respondents because the sample here is not random. So it will be misleading if you try to generalize this thing to the whole population. Now, be very careful about that. So do not say all of them or even a certain percentage of them express that, okay? Do not try to generalize. This is something that even some experienced researchers will commit the mistake. So be very careful about it. So this is an example of how I tabulate the themes. So these are the themes. Some summary of my findings from the interview data. And here I put down examples of the particular sentences from the interview transcript that will correspond to this one. Now, of course, I find these examples because they are linked to the same label. So I select the label related to this theme, and then it's easy to extract the relevant sentences. And notice here, I have also translated the Chinese interview transcript into English. Now, but of course, you do not have to translate all the interview transcript. What I do is I only translate the sentences that I put down into the report. And for anything else, I don't spend time to translate them because I don't need them in the report. So this is what you do in the summary of your interview data or qualitative data. For observation, you do something similar, except that on the right-hand side here, you don't put down the interview transcripts, but you put down your observation notes. And you put them under different themes. So that is how you summarize the qualitative data. And once you summarize the qualitative data, you try to write something about them. So here I have extracted 2 small sessions from my own dissertation. On the left-hand side, here, this is for the results and analysis. I put this paragraph under the results table. So here, try to describe the what I have put down into the table, like the activities enhance learning by providing a chance to apply knowledge. And this thing is from responses A and B. So I put them down here. I put down here so that the readers know what to pay attention to. I'm trying to highlight the key results from the table. And then by learning from their peers, this is from response C and so forth. So I try to describe what is written or what is shown in the table. But notice here, do not write too much. It suffices to give a very straightforward description here. And for further interpretation or analysis, you do it in the discussions. So let's say here, here I say some students criticize the lab exercises as difficult or demanding, and then table 5.8. This is one of the tables with the interview data. And stressful is from another table. So I put down the table references here, and the readers can always refer back to the corresponding table for the data. And here in this discussion, I try to link different parts of my findings together and try to write down the implication of that. So that is what you do in the discussion. The discussion is the most important part for qualitative analysis. Okay. So for these few pages, if you are okay with that, please say okay. How about narrative analysis compared to coding of data? Narrative analysis is something very different from the coding of data, and I'm not familiar with these parts of the analysis. But for narrative analysis, there are also many reference books that will be able to help you. Do you have any research method reference at hand? Not yet. So you try to look for some research method textbook. There are many of them, and the one that I mentioned here, Creswell is a very famous author who talks about research design, including mixed methods design. So you can look for his books and see if you find anything helpful inside. So in summary, so first of all, summary, the research method, what you use should be selected based on your research questions. It's not a matter of personal favor, whether you use quantitative or qualitative method. It depends on how you write your research questions. If you ask a lot of how and why questions, then you should consider qualitative method. But if you only ask simple questions and you aim for generalization of that, then you should use quantitative method. So for qualitative method, remember, you do non-random sampling. You select the people to ask. You don't draw them randomly. And the sample size is usually small, and you aim for in-depth understanding and not generalization. And so the steps for interview and observation, you transcribe the audio records of the interview. But if it is observation, then you already have the observation notes to start with. And then you do the coding. It means you put some labels to the different parts of your data. And then you try to extract the relevant terms or descriptions. And then you try to interpret the result. And this is the most important step. So finally, again, final reminder, do not attempt to generalize your qualitative findings. It is always wrong to do it. So that's the end of this part. And the time is 4 p.m. So I will give you a 5 minutes break. And then when we come back, I teach you the statistics software. So 5 minutes, please come back at 4:08. And if you have any questions, you can put it down in the chat room and I can respond to you. Alpha, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello. Anything
Hi,
you
hi.
want to say to the students?
大家好啊，喂。Hi everyone。大家應該係咪應該喺度㗎？有冇人同我 say hello 啊？
Oh, yes, they are. Yeah. Many of them are here. You can see the chat room.
23 people here. Hi, bye.
Okay, one of you asked, it is difficult to actually connect with interviewees face-to-face. Any differences between analyzing a phone call interview compared with face-to-face interview? Basically not. Basically, you use the same tactics. You have to do an audio recording, and then you analyze the data in the same way as you would do for face-to-face interview. But one difficulty here is that on the telephone, you do not see their facial expressions. And there is no way for you to write down these nonverbal messages. So in the limitation of your session, you can write this as a limitation of your research. Of course, it's not your fault, but you should write it down so that the readers know that you are unable to capture any nonverbal message from the interviewees because of that. But otherwise, for the coding process, is more or less the same. By the way, for those of you who came in late, remember to take your attendance. So now I'm going to switch my screen back to my desktop computer. And show you where you can take your attendance. Okay, do you see my web browser? So here, when you go to this website, you scroll down to the second point here, and there is a link at which you can take your attendance. And in this form, please put down the course. Here you select FD, Fashion Design. You put down your full name, your student ID, and also let me know whether you have enrolled in my SPSS course on Udemy. If yes, please tick yes here, or otherwise, please tick no. The Udemy course means this one. So just for some statistics for myself. And for those of you, if you have not enrolled in this course, but you still want to enroll in it, could Arthur please help me collect the names so that I can issue the coupons again? Arthur, 走咗. Okay.
喺度.
Oh, okay. So some students might not have enrolled.
Yeah, one of students asked me whether you can issue the token or ticket again.
Yeah, sure. But I want to collect all the names so that because I can only issue the coupons 3 times every month, so I want to do them together in batch.
Okay.
Yeah. So students, please, if you need, please send your names to Arthur, and then I will issue the free coupons again. So let's move on to the second part. Now, I have talked about qualitative data analysis, and now let's talk about quantitative analysis again. And this time I'm going to introduce a software. And for those of you who come in late, let me tell you the background again. And because you cannot come back to the campus, and I know most of you might not have access to SPSS at home, because SPSS is a really expensive software. And so I'm here to introduce another software called the Jamovi, which you can use to analyze your data like SPSS. So if you are at your computer, you can click on this link. And here you see a website for Jamovi. Now you look at the screenshot here. From this screenshot, you already see that it looks very much like SPSS. So in fact, if you have taken my previous course on Udemy, you should already have most of the necessary concepts to use this software. So now I'm going to go through how to download this software and then to show you how to do some very basic things in this software. And that will be the second part of my lesson today. So when you are at this website, you can click on the download. Now there are two different versions. One version is 1.1.x and the another one is 1.2.x. Now I would recommend that you download the 1.2.8 version. And the reason is that starting from 1.2.0, you can import an Excel file directly into Jamovi. But if you use 1.1.9, then you have to convert the Excel file to something else, and then you import that format into the Jamovi. So that is less convenient. So for those of you using Windows, you can install 1.2.8 from here. And for those of you using Mac OS, you can install 1.2.8 from here. All right, that is the first thing. So installation will be quite straightforward for Windows and for Mac OS. So I'm not going to go through that here because I'm not using a Mac or Windows. I'm a Linux here. So let me show you what you see when you after you install the software. So Jamovi is a very simple software to use. And the interface looks like this. And basically, if you have used SPSS before, you see that on the left-hand side, it is where you can enter your data. So suppose that you are going to enter your data manually, then you simply do the following. First of all, you name the variable. Like let's say the first one is gender. And then you select the level of measurement. Level of measurement, this is a concept I have introduced in my video course. But just in case you haven't watched that video, continuous means scale in SPSS. It means numbers. Anything that is a number, like your weight, your height, and some length, some width, and so forth, you use it, you put it as continuous. But gender, of course, is not a number. So we have other options here. Here we have an ordinal. Ordinal means categorical. It is categories, and there is some order, some specific order in this variable. So example include age range or age group. Now this is not a single number. It is a group of numbers like 18 to 24, 25 to 19, and 20 to 24, and so forth. So for each of them, it is not just a single number. It is a group of numbers. And there is a particular order among these different groups of numbers. So we call this ordinal. Another example of ordinal is income range. If you ask them what is your range of income, then there is a particular order in that answer. So we also use ordinal. In fact, ORD here means order. Now, but sometimes there are categorical variables, but there are not particular order, such as gender. Gender can be male or female. And you don't have to put male in the front and female as in the second position. You can put female first and then followed by the male. So this is what we call nominal. Nominal means it is just a name. A name. There is no particular order. Another example is like you ask them about their their country of origin, like Japan, US, Korea, and so forth. So all of these are names, and there is no particular order among these names. So it is also ordinal. Now for gender, of course, it is also a nominal variable. So here for gender, let's say if you are inputting your data by hand, then you simply enter the data here. But I would usually use numbers. This is a good practice in entering data. So maybe 1 means male and 2 means female, but we don't put the M and the F inside. Instead, we use a number to represent each of the options. So 1 is male and 2 is female. And then we, in this way, we put down the other answers. Okay, for each row, you should put down the answers from 1 questionnaire. And for each column represents the answers from 1 question of the questionnaire. So the gender here is a question, and here I have 8 respondents, and this is their answer. So I basically put the answer like this. Now, but of course, in the most, and for most of you here, I suppose you are doing online questionnaire, because there is no way for you to do paper-based questionnaire these days. So for Jamovi, it is also very easy to import from existing data sources. So what you do is to open here. So, and then you select the data file. So this is the data file from another student from another department. Here you can import Excel file. If you have an Excel file, you simply select Excel here, and then it will filter all the Excel formatted file. You can import Excel file directly into your Jamovi. Or you can also import other data formats. If you already have an SPSS format data, you can also import it from SPSS. If you know other statistical software such as R, SAS, or JASP, then you can also import their particular format. So this is very convenient thing to do. Now, for my case, let me use an example data file. This is the same data file that I use in my online SPSS course. So if you have watched the videos, then this should be familiar to you already. So at this point, I have shown you how to open a data file in Jamovi. If you are okay with that, please say okay in the chat room. Or if you have any question about that, please ask it in the chat room. Okay, good. It seems that this part is quite straightforward. So once you import your data file, let's say you have imported your data file from Google Form. Google Form allows you to download your data as Excel format, and then you can import the Excel format into this data file. But before you start analyzing your data, you have to clean your data. Do you remember data cleaning? Data cleaning means that you want to handle all the missing data. You want to handle all the invalid data. Usually you don't have missing and invalid data in online questionnaire because the software or the questionnaire already restricts a certain format of the data. But you still have to do something like the level here of measurement might not be correct if you import your data from Google. So you have to fix this. And also, it is a good practice to use a short variable name. When you import your data from Google, Google will put the whole length of the question in here. as the variable name. And that is very difficult to handle in your data analysis. So I also suggest that you rename all the variables, like rename them to Q1, Q2, Q3, and so forth. And that will make your life much, much easier in the subsequent analysis. So let's say here is a set of data that I have already imported into Jamovi. And also I have already fixed all the levels of measurement. And now let me tell you how to analyze the data. Now, because this is just an example set of data, and this is not the same as your own final year project data. So I'm going to talk about it generally. And of course, for all of you, each of you have your own particular problems to deal with. And you will find this very challenging task to do, in particular if it's the first time for you to do it. But I will handle those questions one by one in our upcoming sessions 2 weeks from now. And I will look at your individual data files one by one if your data is ready by that time. But for here, I'm just going to give you a brief or a general introduction to how to do it. So the first thing I want you to do, actually something very helpful, is to install a plugin. So this plugin is called the StatCat, StatKat. Okay, you can see the red icon here. Now, let me tell you how this plugin is helpful. Now, I click on this one, and then I choose like I want to analyze a single variable. So I click single variable. And then let's say I want to analyze the gender. The gender here is a nominal variable. I put it on the right-hand side. Now, look at here. Single variable. Now, it gives you some message. You have entered a dichotomous variable. It means it has two options. Hence, the binomial test for the population proportion of successes may be a good option to you. It tests whether okay, it tells you something. Okay. And then it tells you that you can analyze the binomial test. So let's change it to another variable, like Q1 here, creative thinking here. So now it tells you you have entered a numeric variable, and hence the one sample t-test for the population mean may be a good option to you. And it even tells you how to do it. You click on the t-test, which is actually the button here, and then you choose one sample t-test. And it tells you to drop your variable into the box below the dependent variables, and under hypothesis, fill in the value for mu0 in the box next to the test value and select your alternative hypothesis. So what do you see here? It is actually a helper for you to design what kind of method to use in your analysis. And so this module, it can be a very helpful tool for you. Now, let me tell you how to install this module. It is actually very simple. On the right-hand side, you can click on the modules, and then you click the first one, Jamovi library. And then you are presented with the list, and you simply scroll down to find this one, StatCat. Okay, I have already installed it, so I cannot click on it again. But for you, you can click on the install button, and then in a 1 or 2 minutes, it will install the tool to your Jamovi. So that is a very helpful tool for you to use in case you don't know what kind of method you want to use. Okay. If you understand this, please say understood in the chat room. But of course, if you are really smart, you don't need this tool, and you can determine the method by yourself. But if you want to get some hints, I strongly recommend that you install this tool, and then it gives you a lot of hints here. Okay, so now let's say I want to have a quick glance at what my data is about. So let's say I want to see how many people are female and how many people are male in my data. So what you do here is to go to the first button, you click on exploration, and then descriptives. So at the bottom, you see a new table, but there is nothing inside because I haven't selected the variables yet. So let's say I want to see, I want to analyze the gender. Then what I do is to click on the gender and put it onto the right-hand side. So in less than 1 second, it gives you a table like this. But of course, if you have watched my online video, you know that this table is not very helpful. And the reason is that gender, I put in 1 or 2, but the 1 or 2 here, actually, they are not numbers to be calculated. So it makes no sense to say that the average gender of the people is 1.47. It doesn't make any sense. Now, what we want to do for this kind of data is to look at the frequency. So for this thing on the left-hand side here, you take the frequency tables. And then you see levels, male and female. You see the counts. Counts means frequency for each of them, the percentage of total, and also the cumulative percentage. So that is how you generate frequency distribution tables for your data. Now, of course, you can also do this to more than one variable at a time. So if I also put the gray here, then you automatically get 2 different tables. And again, for each table, it gives you the frequency, the percentage, and also the cumulative percentage. Now, let's put into a continuous variable and see what happens. Creative thinking, and also critical thinking and problem solving. So here in this table, you see we have 3 new columns. And now because these are continuous variables, the mean will become meaningful. So you can say, well, the average score for creative thinking is 2.91. The average score for critical thinking is 3.00, and the problem solving score, the mean score, is the highest of all, which is 3.08. And for continuous use variable, Jamovi will not generate the frequency tables for us, and which makes sense because there are many possible values in the continuous variables. So this is one of the most basic tactics for you to analyze your data. By looking at the data like this, you already get a first glance of, you get some overall understanding of your data set. Now let's also click on statistics here to see what other options we have. So here you see, as I have introduced in my video before, usually we want to calculate the central tendency, which means the mean, the median. Sometimes we want the mode as well. And so once you click it, the corresponding row will appear in this table. And others, we can also calculate the quartiles and also the standard deviation, the variance, and so forth. And finally, down here, you can have the plots here. So the plots, like the bar plot, if you take the bar plot, it will automatically generate the gender plots for you, the gray. creative thinking, but these are not very meaningful here because we have only one group of data, so it only gives you one bar here. But anyway, it gives you the plot, and also you can plot a histogram. If you plot a histogram, then for the continuous variable, it will also generate the histogram for you. So that is actually very convenient. In my opinion, it's actually easier than SPSS to generate this kind of plots. So this is one thing we usually do when we start analyzing the data. Now, one special type of data is Likert scale. Likert scale means you ask them a question and you give them 5 options, usually 5 options, like strongly disagree, and then disagree, and then neutral or undecided, and then agree, and finally strongly agree. So all of these Likert scale are actually ordinal data. So here, let me just pretend that these 5 questions are ordinal. So let me change them to ordinal. To change them to ordinal, you can highlight all the columns, double click at the header here. So, okay, highlight all the columns. Okay, so make sure that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, all of them are selected, and then I simply click ordinal. Then all of them will become ordinal. Now, let me show you how to analyze questions like this. In fact, for most of you who use Likert scale in your questionnaire, this is what you should do as the first step of your analysis. Now, you do it here. You go to exploration again. You click descriptives. And then this time, let me choose only these questions, the ordinal level questions, put them into the variables. Now, of course, for ordinal data, the mean is not meaningful. So Jamovi is not calculating the mean for us, but we want the frequency tables. And also, for this kind of variable, we want the bar plots. So let's see what we get here. Now, first of all, you get for each question, you get the frequency distribution. Like for question 1, you see that 109 of them answered 1. So you let's say for the moment that 1 means strongly disagree, 2 means disagree, and I don't have the neutral item here, and 3 means agree, and 4 means strongly agree. So we have the frequency and also the corresponding percentage. So when you analyze your data, when you generate frequency tables like this, you should look at each of them and see if you can see and find any pattern in your data. Now, are different from qualitative data analysis. Okay, for qualitative, for the interview, we try to get insight. But here, we try to look for patterns or trends. Now, it might be difficult for you to look at the table for the pattern, but you can look at the bar plots here. Now, for this data set, if you look at question 2, you see that actually most of them are choose at 1 and 2, and fewer of them choose 3 and 4. So for this question, your interpretation is that most of them tend to disagree with what you say in this question. This is the trend that you want to report in your data. And for question 3, the difference is even more dramatic. So you see that actually most of them are in 1 and 2. That means most of them disagree with what you say, and only very few of them agree with what you say. So again, this is a pattern that you want to report in your research. And similarly, for question 4, you see that more people disagree, and also the same for question 5. But if you look at question 1 here, you see that again, this one here is higher. The 1, 2 added together is more than 3 and 4 added together. But compared with the other distributions, the question 1 is actually less extreme. So this is also what you can say, you can write in your report. So for those of you who use Likert scale, this is the first step of your analysis. If you understand this, please say yes in the chat room. If you have questions, please type your question in the chat room. Okay, how about the others? Okay, let's do something more exciting. Now, when you analyze your data, it's actually what you want to do is to find something out of expectation. Right? If everything is within your expectation, then your research is not very interesting. What we want to know or we want to find is something out of your expectation, something that no one else knows before. So to do that, we usually try to look at our data in more detail. Now, one way to do it is to compare the answers from different groups of people. So let's say I want to know whether there is any gender difference in here. So what I do is to choose the gender and put it here into the split by. Split by means you want to split all the data by gender. And then you look at their statistics individually and do some comparison. So here, this is what we get. Now, once you split by gender, you see that for each of the table here, it shows you 2 columns, one for male and one for female. And then you can look at the numbers and see if there is any difference in the distribution. Like, is there any question in which the male usually agree with it, while the female usually disagree with it? If you find something like this, then that is a very interesting finding. And then you can try to further explore the explanation behind this finding. Now, you can also look at the plots. Here, the blue one is for male, the orange one, the yellow one is for female. So you can compare the blue one, most of them tend to disagree. The same is true for the female, but if you compare, the female tends to be more conservative. They choose 2, but the male, they also choose 2, but also more of them choose 1, which is more extreme. So if this is your research data, then you can try to explain it using the literature and or using your other data or using your own insight in this problem. And you can also look at the others and see something, look at something very interesting. And usually from my experience, the age group and also the income level will give you some interesting comparison. Gender is usually not an interesting variable to compare with. But of course, if you are doing fashion design, then gender may also be may also make some difference. So you don't know in advance. So what you need to do is to put the variables into it and see them one by one. And if you find something interesting, then you can further elaborate the results in your report. So let's also do another one with the continuous variables like creative thinking, critical thinking, and problem solving. We put them onto the right. And we want to see if the grade will make some difference. Grade means level here. So we use the grade as a splitting variable. And then you look at the mean here. So on the right-hand side, if you look at the creative thinking look at the mean of the creative thinking, then you see that the mean score for creative thinking for grade 4 students is 3.04. But for grade 5 students, it is smaller than that. It becomes 2.89. And for grade 6, it becomes 2.479. It means that if you talk about creativity, the younger students are actually doing better than the elder students. So this is what you get from my data here. Likewise, for the other two variables, you can also try to compare something like this. And this is the bar plot. So obviously, when they get older, they become less creative. I don't know why, but that is what I get from the data. And also creative thinking and problem solving and so forth. So this is how we analyze the continuous variables by group. Now, at this point, I also want to tell you what to do once you finish all these analysis. How do you put them into your report? Now, the way to put them into your report is you can click on the analysis and then right-click. So right-click, you can copy the table alone. It means this table alone. Or you can copy the analysis. You copy it, or you can also copy everything in on the right-hand side in the Jamovi. So let's say I copy the analysis here. I click copy. And then you open your Microsoft Word. I don't have Word here, so let me use something similar. And I paste what I copied. So here, you see the tables. And the table in Word is also a table. So it means that you can actually change the wordings here, remove unnecessary rows or columns here, and then you can also rearrange the numbers. So this is how you put the Jamovi results into your own report. And then on the right-hand side, you see the pictures here. Now, but the bad thing about it is that the picture, once you put it into Microsoft Word or other word processor, you cannot edit it anymore because it is a picture. So, one shortcoming of using Jamovi is that there is no way for you to change the axis labels. So if you are using this here, using the charts here, you have to put them, you may want to write something in the figure caption to tell the readers what the counts here actually mean. So this is a shortcoming of Jamovi. But since we don't have SPSS, this is the only solution, workaround solution we have. Now, let's say you want to remove what you have put here. Then what you do is to click on it, right-click, and then go to the corresponding analysis. Click analysis. Do not click all here. If you click all and click remove, then all the analysis from the first one to the last one will be removed. But if I only want to remove this one, then I click Analysis and then Remove. Then it is gone. So that is how we analyze the data by group, and also how we export the result to Microsoft Word, and also how to remove some result that you don't want. So now let's also do some t-test and some ANOVA, because some of you may want to do this kind of test. Now to do t-test, we click on the t-test here, and there are different kinds of t-tests. Let's say we want to compare the compare the creative thinking by gender. Okay, so what we do is to click t-test and then click independent samples t-test. So here you see an empty t-test table because I haven't put in any variables yet. Then I put the creative thinking, but yeah, in fact, you can put more than one variable into it. So here, under here, you see the test, and the students option has a tick in front of it. The students test means the usual t-test that we use. And then we also need to specify the grouping variable. Now, you know, for t-test, we only compare between two groups. So we put the gender here because there are only male and female in the gender. But if you put the grade here, we have 4, 5, and 6. So there are 3 groups. For t-test, we can only compare 2 groups. Now, once you put in the gender here on the right-hand side, you already see the result. Now, the only thing we are interested in is the p-value. If you remember what I told you in the online video lecture, the p-value here actually tells you whether the variable is different between male and female students. Now, if the p-value is smaller than 0.05, then there is a difference. But if the p-value is larger, then there is no difference. So in this case, we see that the p-value is larger than 0.05 for all the 3 variables. So my conclusion is that male and female students score the same in all these 3 items. Okay, that is our conclusion, the t-test. Now, but I also told you in the online video that sometimes you want to do non-parametric test. Non-parametric test is used when the variable here, like when it is not normally distributed, or when the sample size is too small, or when it is not continuous data. It might be like ordinal data. So in that case, you want to do non-parametric test. In SPSS, you have to do a lot of things to use the non-parametric test. But for Jamovi here, all you need to do is to click the main rightly U test. And then on the right-hand side, you automatically get the p-value for the non-parametric test for this case. So it is actually pretty simple. Usually when we do non-parametric tests, we don't use the t-test. So we remove the tick here in front of the students. And this is our result, non-parametric test result for our data. And if you are doing Likert scale, remember, Likert scale is ordinal level. So for Likert scale, if you want to do the t-test, you have to use the main rightly U test, the non-parametric version of the t-test. So that's for the t-test. If you understand this, please say yes in the chat room. Otherwise, please type your question. Now, of course, you may not know very well about the theory inside the t-test. In particular, if you have not watched my previous videos. But here, just make sure that you know how to operate in this software, how to click the options to do the t-test. And then I can further explain to you later when I see your data. So don't worry about the theory for the moment, just focus on the use of the software. So how about ANOVA? ANOVA is also quite simple in this case. Now I click on the ANOVA button. Most of you, if you do ANOVA, you will be doing either the one-way ANOVA or the non-parametric version here of ANOVA, which is Kruskal-Wallis test. So let's do each of them. Now, one-way ANOVA. So I click on one-way ANOVA. This time, I want to compare the creative thinking among the different grades, because previously, from above, we see that the older the students, the less creative they are. So I want to see if there is any statistical significant difference of the creative thinking score among the 3 different grades of students. So I put creative thinking here into the variables, and then I use the grade as a grouping variable. So on the right-hand side, I already get the result. The p-value is smaller than 0.001, which means that it is actually statistically significant. It means that creative thinking is different among different grades of students. But then if you remember, in this case, we also want to know which grade is different from the others. So in order to do that, we should choose the post-hoc test. Post-hoc test, there are a few options here. So let's choose James Howell. Because we do not assume equal variance here. And then on the right-hand side, you see pair-by-pair comparison of the grades. So you look, again, we look at the p-value. For the comparison between grade 4 and grade 5, the p-value is 0.017, which is less than 0.05. So we say that grade 4 and grade 5 students are different in creative thinking. And for grade 4 and grade 6 students, the p-value is less than 0.001. So again, they are different. But how about grade 5 and grade 6? Grade 5 and grade 6, the p-value is 0.149. So this number is not smaller than 0.05. So actually, grade 5 and grade 6 students are the same in creative thinking. Only the grade 4 student is different from them. This is how we interpret the ANOVA result. And of course, you can also plot the descriptive statistics data like this by clicking on the descriptive plots on the left-hand side. And then you see the plot. Actually, there is really quite some significant difference between grade 4 and the other 2 grades. So this is what we do in ANOVA. The last one, if you want to do non-parametric test for ANOVA, such as you are actually doing ordinal data, okay, or you are using continuous data, but the sample size is small, or if it is not normally distributed, then you should click on the ANOVA here and go to one-way ANOVA, Kruskal-Wallis. Again, the operation is very simple. You put the variable to the left right hand side. You put the grade into the grouping variable. And then you get the p-value, which is smaller than 0.01. Again, it tells you that there is significant difference among the 3 grades of students in creative thinking. Now, but the post-hoc test here, you should click the pairwise comparison. And then you get the table of post-hoc tests. Again, grade 4 and grade 5 comparison, it tells you that the difference is significant at 0.012. Grade 4 and grade 6, the difference is significant and the p-value is smaller than 0.001. And for grade 5 and grade 6, p-value is larger. This time it is 0.183. So there is no significant difference between grade 5 and grade 6. So the conclusion is the same as above in the ANOVA, but we are using a non-parametric version of it here to get to the same conclusion. So that's how you do ANOVA. Now, two more analysis. Because from last year, I know that many of you might be doing regression analysis. If you don't know what it is at this point, it doesn't matter. I will talk to you again later when I see your data. But now let me show you the general ways of doing this. So you click on the regression, and you can find the correlation between 2 numerical or 2 continuous variables. So to do it, you click correlation matrix. And then I put 2 numerical continuous variables here, like the creative thinking and the problem solving. And then it gives you the Pearson's R, 0.658. This is the correlation R between creative thinking and problem solving. And the significance value of this one is smaller than 0.001. So this is how you do the correlation matrix. But you can also do a regression by clicking on the regression, linear regression. And this time you put down the variables. Again, creative thinking, problem solving. Now, on the right-hand side, you see the R square, and also the intercept and problem solving. You see the estimate. Estimate means the regression coefficient. And you also see the p-value on the right-hand side. So that's how we do linear regression using Jamovi. Okay, we have other options here, but let's not to talk about them for the moment, just for the sake of simplicity. If you need to do regression in your own research later, then I will talk to you individually. So the last one is the frequencies. Now, frequencies means the following. In frequencies, we usually use the independent samples chi-square test. So what we do here is we have nominal variables such as gender and also the grade. And we want to see if the gender and the grade are related to each other. So what I mean is that I want to know if, whether the student is a male or female has anything to do with the grade of the student. Of course, we know that these 2 variables should not be related, but let's see how we test for it in the Jamovi. So this is the contingency table. The numbers here means the number that belong to each group under each variable. Say the 135 in the first cell means that there are 135 male students in grade 4. And then we have 123 male students in grade 5, and so forth. So Jamovi will count the frequencies for us. Now, we want to see if the grade and the gender are related to each other. So to do this, we use the chi-square test. The chi-square test is selected here. It is the default here. So on the right-hand side, you see a p-value, which is 0.623. Now, the chi-square test is trying to test for the association between the two variables. If the p-value is small, then it means there is an association. If the p-value is large, like what we have here, that means there is no association. It means gender and grade are independent of each other, which of course you know it is true. Whether the student is in grade 4, 5, 6 has nothing to do with the gender. But suppose that the p-value is very small, then you can conclude that the grade has an effect on the gender, or the gender has an effect on the grade. So that is the chi-square test. We use it to test the relationship between two nominal variables. Okay, if you are okay with this part, please say yes in the chat room. I have gone through many analysis here. I don't expect you to understand all of these analysis at this point, but I just want you to see how you can do it in Jamovi. So at this point, we have already finished the basic operations. Now there are two more things I want to tell you, and then I can end this session. Now, sometimes you want to convert or you want to recode your data. In SPSS, recoding is very straightforward. Recode means you want to convert these variables, like the class here, into numbers. That is what we mean by recode. Now, in Jamovi, we can do the recode in this way. Please turn off your microphone unless you want to speak. Yeah, thank you. So for the class here, suppose that you want to recode the class here from the text to number. So what you do is to highlight this one, and then you use a transform. Transform means recode. So let's say we have created a new variable, and let me rename this variable class recode, just for the sake of clarity. And then the source variable is here, and we want to select a transform. A transform means the rule of recoding. What is the old value and what is the new value? So I click transform. Now this part may look terrible to some of you if you are not familiar with programming, but I will make it very simple. Now what you do here is to click the add recode condition. And then you see an if condition here. So what I want to type is if source equal. You put two equal signs here. Single quotation mark 4a. I want to convert all the 4a into number 1. So on the right hand side, I put a 1 here. And then if I click anywhere else, do you see? In this variable, all the 4a now becomes number 1. Now, the other cells are empty because I haven't told Jamovi how to convert the others. So let's say you want to convert 4b to 2. So I add recook condition. I add one more of them. Equal. And then I put the single quote. This time I put 4b. And 4b I want to use 2. So I click somewhere else. Then for 4b, the number becomes 2. And then you have to input all the values of your nominal variable in order to do the recook. So basically, this part is the same as what you do in SPSS. You also have to input all of them. Now, if it is your Likert scale, then you should put something like strongly disagree, and then 1, disagree, and then 2, and so forth. So once you finish, you will find the recooked numbers here in this class. So this is the how you use the transform function. And you can also control the measure type here. Suppose that you want to make the resulting variable ordinal, then you choose ordinal here, and then the resulting variable will become ordinal. And of course, it depends on your questionnaire design. Now, another option is to compute. Compute is the same as the computing variable in the SPSS. So suppose that I want to find the mean of these 3 variables to give them an overall mean score. To do it, I go to here and click compute. So it creates a new variable for you. So I give a name like all scores. I want to find an overall average of everything. Now, average here is the mean, M-E-A-N. Now, if you don't remember this, you can click on the fx here. Then on the left-hand side, you can choose the function that you want to use. So here, we are using the statistical, and under it, you should find the mean. And you also see the syntax. So I put a mean here, open bracket. Now, but for the variable name, you don't have to click them one by one. You don't have to type them one by one. You can just double click on it. Then the variable name will go into the formula box. Then you give it a comma. And then you double click on the second one, comma, and double click on the last one, close bracket. So if everything is correct, then you click away. You see, this number is the mean number of the 3 scores in my study. So in your study, you can also do something like this. Of course, you can do something more than the mean. Like if you want to add 2 numbers together, then in the formula, you simply put use the plus sign, okay, type the first variable, add the second variable. And then you will get the new variable here. So once you finish analyzing your data, if you want to export your data to SPSS, let's say someday you go back to school and you want to open your data set using SPSS again, then you can go here and click export. And if you look at the data format, one of the formats is SPSS. So you can save your file as SPSS. You can also save as PDF just in case you want to distribute all the results to someone. But otherwise, I suggest that you save it as the Jamovi data format because that will have less compatibility problem. So once you save your file, next time you open it, you will find all your data and your analysis here in the file. So basically, that's what I want to say about Jamovi. If you understand it, please say okay, or otherwise, please say write down your question and put it in the chat room. And of course, here you think it is okay doesn't mean that you find it very easy when you analyze your own data. When you analyze your own data, your own real life data, certainly you will find a lot of problems. And you will find it very difficult. Difficult not because the software is difficult to use, but because the data in real life is very problematic. But I will help you out on your individual data in our later sessions. So now at this point, I want to go back to our website and tell you what else you have from our website. So this website here is designed to help you with your data analysis. And one thing you can see, which you're going to try to read, is to go to the upper right-hand corner and click the FAQ link. So the FAQ is the FAQ from the previous cohort of students. So in the previous 2 years, I have been delivering SPSS workshop and also data analysis workshop here. And many students have asked me questions. And here on this page, I have summarized all the frequently asked questions and also put down the answers. So, for example, if you want to, when you prepare your data, sometimes you want to code multiple response items. It means that you allow the respondent to select more than one choice in a particular question. Now, this is a very troublesome type of question because you have to do some recoding. And the recoding can be tedious. But here I give you an example and tell you what you need to do to recode the multiple response items. And I will go through it later in more detail if I see that you have this kind of questions in your questionnaire. And on the left-hand side, if you scroll down, I also put down something like this: how to code range items, how to code open-end items, how to shall you delete the cases with missing data? Or some questions are specific to SPSS. And so forth. And now on the right-hand side, I give you some suggestions on what kind of data analysis you can do. And actually, it depends on the level of measurement of your data. If it is scale data, including continuous data, then you should calculate the mean, the standard deviation, and so forth. But for ordinal data, you should calculate the median, frequency table, bar chart, and if you want to do any test, you want to do non-parametric test. Nominal data, it means the male and female and the grade. Then you use frequency table, cross tabulation, bar chart, and if you want to do a test, you do chi-square test. Okay, this is what I have already shown you. And for qualitative data, you do thematic analysis and discourse analysis and so forth, which is partly covered in the first part of this session. So how do you, what can you do with Likert scale data? and also finally how you report your data, like how you export your tables to Microsoft Word, how you report demographic data, how you report open-end answers, and finally where you download SPSS for use at home. But this is a 14-day free trial, which might not be very helpful because it's unlikely that you can complete all the analysis in 14 days. So you can use Jamovi instead. So this is the FAQ. Now go back to the first page here. If you scroll down. Oh, by the way, this is my name. I forgot to introduce myself. Okay, and then we have a checklist. Now the checklist here basically tells you the steps you need to finish your final year project report. So we begin with data input. If you use online questionnaire, then you can skip these two steps. And then you proceed to clean the data and also analyze the data. And finally, you report them. So if you can complete all these 12 steps, then you are done with your final year project. So in order to help you further, I have also put down some templates here under the references. The data analysis template is a table like this. Now I emphasize again and again that what you analyze should depend on your research question. So in order to make it more systematic, this is one way I suggest that you to do. You write down each of your questionnaire, each of your research questions here, and then you write down the variable in your questionnaire that corresponds to the research question, like a Q4, okay? You write down the level of measurement, and then you write down what the variable will tell you, and what is the appropriate way to analyze the data. Of course, you can refer to my FAQ in order to know which one method to use. And finally, this one is the most important. Once you determine your method of analysis, you write down the charts and the tables that you want to report. In this case, for example, I want to report the histogram of the household income. And once you do it, once you get the column of charts and tables, then you can use it as a checklist. So suppose that you want to see how to, you simply do the charts and the tables one by one. And then you put the charts and the tables into your Word report. And when you are done with everything in this column, then you have produced all the necessary charts and tables for your report. So this is how you can do it, by mapping the questions to your research questions and then writing down the method of analysis and writing down a list of charts and tables to produce. So I hope this thing will help you, will make things easier for you. And here we also have a report template, which is a template for you just in case you don't know what to write into your report. So for a report like this, you usually have an introduction section, literature review, you write down the methodology, and now for the results and analysis. So for each of the analysis you do here, you put down the table and the charts. And of course, before that, you also put down the demographic data. Now here you put down the tables and the charts for the result, and then you write down the interpretation. We don't usually write a lot here in results and analysis. You simply describe what you see in the tables and the charts, just like what you do in qualitative analysis. And once you finish all the analysis, you go to the discussion, use the results in the previous sessions to answer the research questions and also discuss your findings in depth. This is how you write your report. And finally, you draw your conclusion here, which means to summarize your answers to your research questions and also suggest possible limitations to your result and suggest how to do it better in the future. So that is what you do in the report template. Now, if you follow my data analysis template and the report template, then it should be easier for you to complete all the 12 steps. And finally, previously, you have already attended the course on Udemy, but I also have another website at the end, the SPSS Data Analysis in Practice. So this website, again, you find a link to the Udemy video. And also under lessons 1, 2, 3, 4, you find the lecture notes that correspond to the Udemy video. So if you need, you can go here and download the lecture notes. Like here, you have the lecture notes on basic concepts of statistics. So this is the similar to the table that I shown in the first session today. And you also see other, okay, like how to do sampling and so forth. So you can download the lecture notes from here under lessons 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for the QDA session that I delivered this morning in the earlier session, you can click download it from the QDA. And then here, you see the link here, you click on it. And you see the qualitative research lecture notes. So that's all I want to tell you in this session. So is there any question you want to ask at this point? Or if you are okay with it, please say okay. So time is almost up, and I'm going to end here. And also, I'm going to end the audio, the video recording here.